The Minnesota Vikings have made a decision there, Brady Quinn. Sam Darnold, not expected to get the franchise tag. The deadline is coming up later on today, and Sam Darnold, according to NFL media, is not expected to receive that franchise tag. That according to Ian Rappaport. All parties are working through options to potentially keep him in Minnesota, but he is going to at least get to see the market, and they're not going to tag him here. Not the biggest surprise.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in Minnesota is truly working to keep him in Minnesota if you're not willing to tag him. I mean, that would be the ultimate statement that we want to keep him for at least the minimum the next year. And then after that, we'll figure it out if we can get a long-term deal done. But everyone's kind of forgotten. We've drafted J.J. McCarthy in the first round, who got hurt last year and maybe showed some promising signs during the time that he was, with them and healthy, that he could be the guy. So if they were serious about it, they would have put the franchise tag on. They just would have. I mean, that's how you would have typically handled this. There's going to be spots for him. And they know that, especially with Matt Stafford going back to the LA Rams. We got the Giants. We got the Raiders. We have a number of teams that I think, are looking at trying to figure out their quarterback situation. The Cleveland Browns are in this situation right now, despite the fact they have Deshaun Watson on the roster with the re-injury of the Achilles. We know that they're going to be looking for someone to be their signal caller this year. So he will end up being somewhere else. I'd be shocked if he was back in Minnesota with this news. Clearly, they can say all the right things, and Minnesota's a great organization, but we know that he's going to end up somewhere else. Like, that's just the bottom line. And you have to wonder if it was the final two games, the way they finished the season with everything's on the line, playing for the division at that point, and then how he played subsequently in the playoff game. I mean, if you're really looking at his entire body of work, he had a career year, an awesome year. I mean, if we're talking about the veteran guys who are available, better than Rodgers, better than Stafford, and yet they're still willing to basically say, yeah, we'd rather go with the younger guy. Which, I mean, look, the thing about Minnesota that's interesting and how this all worked out, they had a much different idea of how things were going to go last year in the offseason than I think most people did, right? They let Kirk Cousins end up becoming a free agent, signing his deal in Atlanta. They moved on from Danielle Hunter, who went down to the Houston Texans. And instead, they replaced both those guys with what they did in the draft. And so you thought there was going to be this rebuilding that's going to be going on. And I think Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, their general manager, most likely put together kind of hey, here's our timeline. 3 years from now, like, this is where we want to be. This is the start of how we're going to rebuild this. And they're probably looking at that vision or that plan after year one of it, saying, look, we overachieved with what we expected this past year. I think you could honestly make that case, too, for Kevin O'Connell's first year, where they went, 13-4, and they won a bunch of close games. It was either first or second year. And, they ended up ultimately not really being able to do much after that. But if you had asked them, like, hey, how would you go back and look at last year? It's like we won all these one-score games. It's just not going to happen often. And they were able to do that. This year was kind of that, too, where they probably overachieved from where they thought they were going to be. And now they find themselves in a spot where there's high expectations. They're going to have basically a rookie quarterback again if they're going to be moving on from Sam Darnold. And, we'll see where they mix in the NFC North. But I think they stuck with their plan is what I'm trying to get to. Instead of saying, whoa, we didn't expect Sam Darnold to come in here and have the year that he did. Let's stick with him for a little bit longer. And I got to be honest with you, I like this for J.J. McCarthy, and I like this for the Vikings long term because it's nothing against Sam Darnold, but it was 1 year. And if they're not confident and they see him every single day, right? They see him practice. They've seen him play. They know what the game plan is. They understand how he's executing it and how they're grading him out. If they're not willing to put the franchise tag on him, then I think that's telling enough of what they think about him.
And to speak to they exceeded expectations. There's a reason why Kevin O'Connell won Coach of the Year because they didn't expect that team to perform like this with Sam Darnold and this roster as is. We talked about it during the season. Their win total was, 6.5 before the year? Like, they were by far and away projected to finish last in the division, and they had the year they had. And it is wild that the perception completely changed on 2 games. It was that game against the Lions and the playoff game. And now it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe he's not going to. Like, there was conversations, like, Pete Prisco and I were kind of kicking around, like, what do they do with J.J. McCarthy? Do they keep Sam Darnold long term? Those 2 games completely changed the discussion about what Minnesota does with Darnold and what direction they go with J.J. McCarthy. And I know he had the second surgery on, dealing with the issue that he had, J.J. McCarthy did. And it's like, all right, I mean, yeah, that's not great, not ideal, but you drafted him for a reason. And I'm fascinated to see how this works with Kevin O'Connell and seeing if he can do it with another quarterback this time around after all the success he's already had. I mean, he's been fantastic in Minnesota.
He has been. Like, if I'm telling you, that tree, that Shanahan coaching tree, when you look at the Kyle Shanahans, the McVays, the O'Connells, he's I don't want to say even quietly, but he's put himself in that conversation for being one of the best offensive minds and play callers. And it's really interesting because it's all built around Justin Jefferson. Like, that's his chess piece. That's a queen moves around a lot more than a king. So I said, but that's really the most important piece of his chess set because of how he moves him around within the offense and how defenses adjust to it. So it's a compliment to Justin Jefferson because they know his value, but it's also very indicative of where the game's at. Right, like these games are about the passing game, about some of the different stars they have on the outside now. And if you have a quarterback who can get him the football, or an offensive play caller who can scheme up something to allow him to get Justin Jefferson the football, it could be a dangerous combination.
So on the chessboard, he would be the queen then, Justin Jefferson, not the king.
Well, yeah, I mean the king really doesn't move around and do as much, so that's why it wouldn't be a fair comparison. But I also realize in saying that it's also not a very flattering comparison. Saying that,
I think people need to grow past that. All right, we're just talking about a chess piece. It's not calling anybody a name, and I think that people are way too sensitive.
I'll tell you someone who was playing chess, not checkers. So yesterday, I happened to be taking my 3 oldest daughters to a theme park. I'm not gonna say what theme park and all that, but I noticed a family, a woman who was on a motorized cart, and this thing, like, they take you over on this little ferry from one spot to the theme park, and she drove that thing up on to the boat. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, this is going to be a tough day for them if she's got to drive this around, and they've got 2 kids with them. How is this all going to work? And she popped right off that thing and just walked right down to her seat. And I was like, oh, all right. So this is more of, it's not really that necessary. It's more of like, yeah, it's going to be a long day. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this motorized cart so I don't have to walk around the whole time.
Now, what airline do you think she took to get out there, if you had to guess?
Probably the cattle call of the air, Southwest, most likely. Round up.
Seems like that seems like the go-to. Now, speaking of Justin Jefferson, he was on the Pat McAfee show starring A.J. Hawk, and he did talk about the situation at quarterback, and to him, doesn't matter either way.
I'm not sure who the quarterback is going to be. And just like I said last year, it truly doesn't matter personally to me. It doesn't matter who's going to throw me that ball. I'm going to make the most of my opportunities. I'm going to try to make him look the best quarterback in the whole NFL, just, making the contested catches, making those catches that look difficult be easy. So just having that confidence in me and just, creating that connection with the quarterback, no matter who the quarterback is going to be. That's the main part, and just having that confidence in each other to when it's all said and done and it's getting crunch time, they know who to come to.
So he has caught passes, Justin Jefferson, in his career so far from Kirk Cousins, Sean Mannion, Josh Dobbs, Nick Mullins, Jaron Hall, and Sam Darnold. So, he's worked with several.
I mean, those other guys didn't play a ton,
They were slinging it to him. They got him.
I mean, again, it comes down to, I think, 2 things. Kevin O'Connell's ability to be able to get Justin Jefferson in space or isolated and open. And then, honestly, Kevin O'Connell working with these quarterbacks. Kevin O'Connell played quarterback. I'm not going to go as far as saying he's like a kind of quarterback whisperer, but I think he's getting close to being named that. Whereas, we kind of talk about running backs playing in the Kyle Shanahan system and how just throw them in. Like, they'll be able to run for a bunch of yards and be highly productive. I think a lot of people would tell you that same thing for quarterbacks in Kyle Shanahan's system. It's like that with Kevin O'Connell. I mean, he's getting to that point where, as a quarterback, if you're looking at destinations, you might be saying to yourself, like, especially as a backup, you might be saying, man, I want to go there. Because if I do get the shot to go in, I mean, look at Sam Darnold. He didn't go there with the intention to start. He went there with the intention to probably be a backup if he gets his shot. We'll see what he can do with it. And look what he did with it. He's going to be able to cash in on a big deal, and now he's got a chance at retaining that franchise quarterback title if he can replicate what he was able to do with Minnesota last year. Again, assuming he's not signing back, but I think you and I would agree, if they really wanted him to be back, they would have placed the franchise tag on him. I have a hard time believing Minnesota's going to be able to match the offer of some of these other teams.
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah, he'll be elsewhere.